Welcome to episode 5 of Grip It and Rip It, here with Phil Keel, our director of paid social, and today we're talking about meta account structures. So, how's it going, Phil?
Yeah, good, good. Really busy start to the year. Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of positivity. I think Q4 was good for some brands. Yeah, Q4 was really good for a lot of our brands, and yeah, it seems like sort of Q5, Q1 period has started off well. So obviously that translates to me being happy.
Yeah, but busy is good. So, as we go into Q1 2026, what would you say is the default meta account structure, if there is one?
So none of our accounts are exactly the same as each other. Is like the short answer to that question. We've definitely got best practices and learnings that we apply across all of our accounts, and like learnings that we tell to people when we do audits or try and provide value. But there's no carbon copy that will always work across every account, and there never has been. And I think us as marketers have tried to will that into existence. Like, just do this and you'll be okay. But there's so many variables that are unique to every business that change that account structure. So what are some of the things that will impact the account structure? Affordability, cash flow, margin, profitability, like COGS, overheads, time in the business. The account structure for a business that's 3 months old will be very different to the account for a business that's 3 years old or 10 years old. They have pros and cons, but we have to be unique to every business.
Yeah, and I mean, that's usually the honest answer is it depends, but it's not the one people want to hear. And people on YouTube or wherever, I'm sure they, I'd love to do clickbaity thumbnails like, this account structure will make you $1 million, but it's never that simple, right?
Yeah, we like to manage accounts in certain ways. So if we're talking about like budget, we'll have like a CBO for this type of campaign or this type of account, and an ABO for this, and we'll use bid caps and cost caps in these instances, and we'll test creative in this way. And we like to set up accounts in certain ways, but it doesn't always go that direction. And also you have to consider the position of the account when you take it on. It's very rare for an agency to be managing an account from day one, with like setting up the account, setting up the first campaigns for the very first time. So you're usually inheriting a lot of good practices, bad practices, and if a business is at a certain pace, you can't just turn it off. You have to sort of optimize the plane as it's mid-flight.
Would you say, is there, it always kind of depends on the business, like what they have going on, what they had set up before. Is there any kind of general differences in account structure nowadays versus in the past? Like, for example, back when I was running meta campaigns, I remember that you would always want to have a retargeting campaign or retargeting ad set, but it seems like that's kind of like baked into things now. Is that true? And like, are there more things like that that may be like kind of just like generally true about campaign structures now versus in the past?
Yeah, consolidation's a big thing. We've got more accounts now that are running in like one, two, or three campaigns, and they're scaling successfully, and they're having year over year wins, and that's great. Retargeting, like you mentioned, is less of a thing, and that I think that started to make a big change in like iOS 14. Was that 2021 maybe? I can't remember. Meta will always want to do more retargeting than you want it to, so you don't want to overspend on retargeting. There are definitely certain times where retargeting will need to be a part of the strategy, and we can talk about that. I think the big change from when I started to learn Facebook ads like 10 years ago is how you test creative and scale it. It used to be a lot more around test and duplicate. So we're testing here in a sandbox, and then we're finding a winner, and we're moving it over here into a different campaign. We're continuing to test, and then we're scaling here. And now everyone is pretty much agreed on like test and scale in place. So we launch creative. If it works, we scale it where it is. You might get busy and put those ads somewhere else, but it's not so much of a golden rule that that's what you're going to do. It's more around launching ads and scaling them in places, which is a bit more like Google Ads. You don't really see that much copy and paste across the account. You kind of have a strategy and you put that strategy into place into the campaign that it's working in. So I think that's the biggest change that's probably most universal. Yeah, less campaigns, less fragmentation, especially for smaller budgets. I think unfortunately that's probably where most accounts go wrong when they are spending, maybe under 3k USD a day. They're probably launching too many campaigns for that budget.
In terms of like this trend of moving towards more and more consolidation generally, can we expect that to continue? Like, is the future going to be like even less, number of campaigns in ad accounts, or what does the future of meta account structures look like, do you think?
I think it's going to slow down. I think consolidation is going to slow down because we're almost reached the point where even Meta probably couldn't consolidate it even further. They've got things like flexible ads now, which is what they've kind of rebranded dynamic creative testing. So dynamic creative testing was a big thing. You used to group a load of assets together and test it in that way, and sort of media buyers did like it because you could test very quickly and you got some data back. Flexible ads is like version 2 of that, where Meta wants you to put all the assets together into a single ad: images, video, branded assets, ugly assets. I think that's quite attractive as an idea that you pull a campaign together, like a marketing campaign together into a single ad and send it off. It's very consolidated, and I think if it works, then I think that's quite an attractive product for Meta to have. So I think it will slow down. I don't think it'll be at a point where there's a sort of like one campaign and one ad,
Yeah.
because I think that will start to impact Meta's ability to drive up ad spend, which is ultimately sort of Meta's product, really.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, it makes sense. There's kind of a limit to how far you can consolidate. It seems interesting. Well, this is a theory that I have, and this could be totally wrong, but it seems like in the past, account structure was a lot more relatively important than creative testing, like creative volume. And now it seems like there's kind of inverse. Like I remember before, you'd have to like set up the structure like this way, and then tweak, set this little option, like do this. And the creative, like no one really thought about the creative. Now it seems like it's the inverse, where you have an ASC or whatever kind of like simplified CBO is going on in there now, and the creative is like super important. So it seems like they've kind of flipped. Do you think that's true?
Yeah, if we start with the account structure, it's now more around not doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
It's sort of like this huge space in the middle where, and like I said, there's lots of different account structures that can work. There's almost this big ocean in the middle where you will find an account structure and a campaign setup that will work. And then there's sort of like 20% at the end, which is the best account structure. And that's what, agencies and really good media buyers should be aiming for. And then there's probably like a 40% area at the end of the scale, which is totally the wrong account structure.
Yeah.
And it's all about like moving, and maybe we can turn this into a graphic, but it's all about moving outside of that, getting out of that um, mistake realm into the
Yeah.
okay space, and trying to get into that sort of like final 10 to 15%, which is really optimal. That's the best way of thinking about account structures. And that, it's great that there is so many options that can work and scale, because it means you can really build out an account structure that is right for the account and right for that specific business. And then creative is the biggest lever. And that's creative is the biggest lever, and that's why account structure is actually so important, because you can have really, really good creative, the right volume, investing the right amount of spend into your creative. But if you're in that bad place for your
Yeah.
account structure, then you're not going to be, I guess, reaping the rewards of that investment into creative.
And do you think that there are any common misconceptions or misunderstandings that brands or media buyers have about account structure that typically ends up with them being in that bad category?
It usually comes down to control and how much control the brand wants or the media buyer wants over what happens in the account. So where Meta spends, how many optimizations you're making in a week or in a day or in a month. And all of these things are relative to your budget. So control, the number of changes, where you want spend going, sort of like the targeting, exclusions, placement spend and demographic spend. These are the sort of traps that brands and media buyers can fall into about trying to over focus on control, where like the lack of control isn't a new thing. We've kind of been losing control since maybe like 2017, 2018. And I can remember, I think it was 2019, where Meta was trying to bring in like forced CBO. So every campaign would be campaign budget optimization. You couldn't have a campaign where the budget was controlled at the ad set. And they got really close. It was almost like sort of a government bringing in a new piece of legislation. They got really close to doing it and then scrapped it. And, everyone was relieved that we still had this level of control. And it's interesting that they've never really retried that. They've kind of, okay, we didn't win that battle, let's park it. But that's just a sign that, we have been losing it since 2019. I don't necessarily think that's the bad thing, because plenty of times Meta's shown that it can develop good products. Like Advantage Plus was really good when it first came out. Media buyers were generally very positive about it. Partnership ads, another good thing. Like Instagram shopping, they're not overly focused on it right now, but I think that was generally a good product, and that was sort of in response to iOS 14. So yeah, and I think losing control enables you to focus elsewhere. Product development, margins, landing pages, everything else.
Yeah, and it seems like with account structures, sometimes when there's a lot of options for control and they can, you have the ability to like, change all these different things, it seems like usually brands or media buyers will make like a lot of changes really quickly, and then it muddies the data, and it seems like less is almost more in terms of testing different things related to account structure.
There is naturally this seesaw that you see in the account data. We're constantly reporting to clients, multiple times during the week, every Monday, and we constantly see this seesaw in activity, in performance, up 10%, down 5%, up 7%. And you want to act in a way that mitigates that seesaw, sort of up and down volatility, and you want to act in a way that sort of pushes against it. So what we like to talk about is sort of building predictable activity. So an example could be increasing budgets on a Monday, launching new ads on a Wednesday, pausing ads on a Friday, and just do that over and over again, and remove the, I guess, like the emotional reactiveness that we can all have.
Yeah, and it's hard when you're the brand owner and this is your baby and it's super tied to, you're super tied to it economically, you're super invested in it. And, ironically, that when you're the most concerned about it, you're probably making like the worst decisions because you're, changing things a lot. So that's just how it goes, I guess.
Yeah, and you're reacting to what the data in the ad account, and what you might not be thinking about, okay, is what's driving those changes in the ad account outside. It could be a competitor has gone on offer. It could be an SEO change that happened on Google and your rankings went down. It could be something that happened on the website. It could be a bug. It could be something up with Shopify. It could be like a reseller of yours discounting your own product. All of those things will show data in the Meta ad account. And none of those things can really be solved in the Meta ad account. But I think quite often we fall into the trap of doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely done that before. So if you had to summarize what we've talked about, or just like the most important advice for brand owners and media buyers related to account structure, what would you tell them?
Less is more. Build your account relative to your budget. Try to remove the emotion from your activity in the account, and you're probably not consolidated enough. If an ad doesn't get spent, it probably shouldn't have got any spend in most cases. So yeah, let Meta have more control.
Well, there you go. And if anyone's unsure about what we talked about, you have any questions, reach out to us. Phil's world-class meta expertise can help you out. Check out your ad account, help you figure out what's going on in there. So thank you, Phil. It was great talking. I think people watching this got a lot of value out of our conversation about account structures and looking forward to connecting again.
Cheers, Brian.
All right. Thank you.